If you want to know the real cost of living from someone who's not originally from Florida, then this is the video for you. And stay to the end, and I'll give you my number one cost that I didn't expect when moving to Orlando. Let's go. What's up, everyone? My name is Cameron Hodge, a realtor here in Orlando, and this is your first time coming to the channel. On this channel, we talk about eating, sleeping, and living in Orlando. And if you could hit like and subscribe so you can be notified every time we have a new video. So we always have people reaching out to us day, night, weekends, doesn't matter, and we absolutely love it. So if you're making the move to Orlando and you need help making that move, give us a call, text, email, whatever you have to do when moving to Orlando. All right, so cost of living. So I'm not going to get super into exact figures and the numbers and overall. I'm just going to give you an overview of what I found and what kind of shocked me when I came here and what kind of equaled what I expected when coming here. So if you haven't watched any of the previous videos, before this, my family lived in San Diego, California, in North County. So obviously coming from California, everything's cheaper, right? I mean, we're making the move from California to Florida, like it has to be cheaper. Well, overall, yes, it was cheaper. So one of the first things that I found when making that move was gas. Right? Like if you've ever lived in even parts of New York where I grew up, or definitely in California, like in California, when we had initially left, I mean, before we really got bad with COVID and the prices and everything like that, like we were still trending like $3.50 and higher at the time that we left per gallon. And when we had first come to Florida at that time, gas was, even hitting $3. But by the time we finished making our discovery trips at that time, and it fluctuated about $2.83. Like it was awesome, like completely like life changing, especially if you've been in California before. Like when I first went to California in 2014, I was paying like almost $5 a gallon. It was like a single and I had no money at that time. So that was one of the things that we found when coming to Florida was that, obviously gas is just overall cheaper. And the second thing that we found when making the move out here that was obviously a big difference is home prices. So this is one I think people kind of get misconstrued. So when we were initially leaving California to come out here, we were like, oh man, everything's cheaper, because you kind of have the blinders on, right? Like when you're coming from, again, an expensive state or city like that, you're like, oh man, like everything, like a condo can cost like $400,000 in the middle of nowhere, San Diego. Well, it's cheaper in Florida, but like what I think people don't always realize is the fact that like it's what you max your budget out. So like if you can afford, let's say 400,000, right? Like if you're gonna 400,000 and you come to Florida, you still might end up paying 400,000, and in the end you're still kind of paying the same per month roughly. And people don't always realize that. It's like, look, yes, you could save money when it comes to homes if you're buying under budget comparatively. So I will say though, one thing I noticed when it came to homes is, so like, here's a good example of price actually, before I get into it. In California, when we sold our condo that we were living in, sold for about like $360. And then I come over to Florida and I built a brand new home at that time for $380, 2,500 square feet, 5-bed, 3-bath. Like, do you have to max your budget out and make it? No, you don't. Mind you, that's still it was a little below our budget at the time, but still we got a brand new house. Now, obviously when it comes to land and all that, it kind of changed out where we live, but like how crazy is that, right? You come from somewhere like California and all that crazy expensive. We came out to Florida. Yeah, we were looking at homes and there were a lot of great options, but we had time on our hands, and my wife made the decision. She's like, I want what I can't have in California. That's what we did. So I'm like, well, then I guess we're building. That's how that conversation went. So obviously that's crazy, condo over there, barely much more. And we're building a brand new home, single family home here in Orlando. Well, at that time we were building. So but it's like I said, like you start maxing out your budget, like, are you really saving any money? Not really. Cause you have like other costs like insurance, right? Like when you come out here, if your roof, the home you're buying, if the roof is older, like insurance is going to go up. Or when we were building that home, and all of a sudden we were building it and, be like, oh, hey, by the way, this is in a flood zone. So now your $900 a year insurance for this home, that's where the first quote was, is now $1,200 because now you have flood insurance you have to worry about. Now, like, there's all those hidden costs and there's ways to be sure and careful. Obviously, like when you're building new construction, those costs kind of come up when you get the survey and all that stuff done. But when it comes to buying a house, like if you have a good insurance rep or get a recommendation from one, you can get that kind of figured out before you even hit it to find out if you're like, okay, you can start running the numbers, the monthly cost, and what that's going to hit you with. But that's something that we didn't fully know because coming from California, like insurance is pretty standard. Size of home, the only thing that would change it if you were in a fire zone. But out here in Florida, obviously flood zones are a thing. You also have like if the roof is older on the home, like eventually that could start increasing your insurance. And when we first hit that, I mean, we had a client that I was helping at one time, and he was looking for a specific type of home in Orlando and went through everything, hit escrow, and all of a sudden we realized at the time, he realized, before he came to us, actually, this was in a previous transaction, but when we came into him afterwards and come to find out, like he hopped into this transaction and find out the roof didn't have the proper hurricane strapping for the shingles. And all of a sudden his insurance went up substantially from where his budget was. And unfortunately, it just kind of pushed him out because he didn't want to have that price to deal with, nor having to go through that headache in the future if he went to sell it. So like I said, it's not like a huge difference in cost, but it's something to just keep in mind of. And obviously, if you want someone that does it for you, reach out, call, text, email, whatever you have to do. And we are happy to be here for you in that move to save you from the headaches that we dealt with. The next thing that kind of caught me was, like property taxes. And it really depends where you're coming from, because some are going to be higher, some are going to be lower. And overall, Orlando isn't the worst, right? But like coming from California, like home prices are crazy. The news talks about it. Everyone knows California home prices are just obnoxious. Well, the average property tax, depending on your county out there, I mean, it's like 0.95, but then I come to Orlando and it's 1.16. Like it varies on suburbs and all that, but that's about what you're paying in property taxes. And obviously that difference, that's why I say, like, if you're planning on maxing out your budget, like you're going to get more for your budget. Like you're going to get like 400,000 here is not going to get you a 400,000 would in New York City. Probably doesn't even exist or San Diego. Or if your budget's like even $1 million, right? Like $1 million budget here could get you something amazing that probably just blow you away and make that wife happy, which let's be honest guys, that's what we're going for, right? But like $1 million in California it could barely be a condo. I mean, if you're like looking at Del Mar and stuff like that, like you were looking at like over $2 million for a single family home that's 3-bed, 2-bath, and it's not going to be a new home. Like it's just absolutely crazy. So like that's what I always tell people when you're coming to Orlando, like the property taxes, like it's just all those fine things that are going to that you wouldn't expect, you just don't even think about, because overall you're like, it's cheaper. But there's little things like that come and get you. And actually takes me into the next point, which is just overall tax burden. A tax burden, in like my own words, is just like your overall, like your sales tax, everything just kind of overall. And I think at the time I made this, it's about like 9.86 is like the overall, like if you make money, that's about what you're gonna pay, assuming you own a home and like all this crazy stuff, right? So like I said, depending where you're coming from, especially California, like property tax might be a little higher. There is no income tax though, which is a huge thing everyone talks about, is that you come here, you don't have income tax. And that's great, right? Like your earned income, you're just keeping more in your pocket. But overall, when you look at sales tax and like property and there's all those other taxes that kind of come into play, like if you're looking at a state like a California, like yes, it is lower a little bit. I think by a couple percent. Like it's not a lot overall, but it's something, right? And if we're coming from that state that you came here not just for money, which I'm sure that had a part to play, it's lifestyle, it's living, it's things to do, it's the family. So it's just something to keep in mind that your burden's gonna be a little bit lower, but it's not like you're moving to middle of nowhere in the Midwest. Like you're still coming to Florida, the state's gaining in popularity, and it's still not the cheapest state in the country when you're looking at like the Midwest and like, smaller towns out in those places, actually even like smaller towns in North Florida. So something to keep in mind. Now, the last and final thing that really caught me off guard, I didn't even think about when making the move out here, was income. And it's not really a cost of living, but it's something you need to factor in. So obviously in my position, right, like I'm a real estate agent, home price is a little bit lower. If you also have whether you're self-employed or job that relies on like cost of living or just like factors that run along those financial numbers, like it's probably going to be lower here. Now, companies like Disney are moving tons of employees out here. Like companies are, Florida's gaining in popularity in a lot of ways. But keep in mind that most of the time, you're probably going to have a lower income if it's not a remote job that you're carrying from another state. So a lot of people don't always realize, especially if they're in that planning phase where they're like, hey, I'm coming from New York, Virginia, California, Oregon, Arizona. And they're like, oh, I'm ready to move, next year I'm going. It's like, okay, great. Like, what's your plan for income? Because it's good chance it's gonna be lower, like minimum wage is lower, like everything's just a little bit lower or substantially depending on what state you're coming from. But it's something that I think like didn't quite hit me off guard entirely, but I definitely seeing a lot more clients and friends and family that I moved out to the state in the area that it can affect a lot of people where they just didn't realize like how much less their job would pay, or if their company's like, hey, we'll relocate you, but they don't realize like the hit that they'll take. But also keep in mind that hit might not be permanent. It might just be something that you have to do to get your family to a better life. I hoped all these things helped you. It's just a brief overview of some of the costs and things that came up and hit me that I wasn't fully expecting, even, when I came to make the move out here with my family. If you have any other concerns or questions, reach out to us. We are here for you 24/7 to help you when moving to Orlando to avoid the mistakes that I made and even some of our members in our team made. So without that, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.